Good evening, everybody. This is Hubert O'Hearn, and for Wednesday, August the 24th, 2011, this is the first of two, a book and a martini. I'm doing two episodes today. Read two remarkable novels this week that I want to share with you. The first one is Natural Order by Brian Francis. This is the follow-up to his 2004 book, Fruit. About the experience of a young man, age 13, who grows up and discovers that he's gay. Francis is a wonderful writer. He didn't get per se discovered until 5 years after Fruit, when all of a sudden it showed up on Canada Reads. He was on emerging authors list and so forth. I also had a conversation with him yesterday that I'm going to build into this video review of Natural Order. As always, the reason why I do the video review is that the print version will be available in winnipegReview.com. I'll put the URL down in the notes there, and it will appear on buythebookreviews.com in about 3 months. But I want to tell you a bit about the book. It's wonderfully written in two ways, and what I found that it answered the question to is that why is there a closet in society? Why can't gay people be gay? I don't care if anybody's gay. Why should you care if anybody's gay? What people do behind closed doors really shouldn't matter, you know? We had a wonderful Prime Minister in Canada named Pierre Trudeau, who came to prominence when he was the Justice Minister and gave a speech in which he said that the state has no business in the bedrooms of the nation. In some ways, I think that Natural Order answers that question. Why do gay people feel compelled to be in a closet? Well, their families kind of make them that way. Primarily, this is the story of two sons and mothers. It takes place over 70 years. The main character is Joyce Sparks. Her son, John, as you may have gathered, is gay. Joyce, when she was in high school, had her first crush was on a guy by the name of Freddie Pender. Joyce and Freddie worked at the same ice cream shop. I mean, we're talking very much Frank Capra territory here. And Freddie was gay. He was the drum major for the high school band, and he got himself a big white suit, and he was twirling his baton, and Joyce just fell for him. He was the one and only date, or pardon me, Joyce was the one and only date that Freddie ever really had. That date consisting of dinner with Freddie and his mom. Mom was ashamed of Freddie. You'll find this out pretty early on, that Mrs. Pender more or less kills her son by announcing to the small town, small city that they all grow up in, that Freddie had committed suicide by jumping over the railing of a cruise ship in Alaska on which he was performing. Joyce's son John, he also grows up gay. And what is fascinating, when I spoke to Brian Francis, I asked him, why did you go for the theme of sons and mothers? And he said that mothers are ferocious people. He said, I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean ferocious, protective. And Joyce saw that her son John, the toy he most wanted was a little girl-like baby doll thing, right? And Joyce broke down and bought it for him, but don't tell Dad, okay? And Joyce wants to protect John from the world that would not accept him. Interestingly enough, the word homosexual does not show up in the book until very, 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 very late in it. When Joyce finally admits to her friends that John was a homosexual, John, by the by, and you know this from page 1, John dies in 1984. Gay men who died in 1984, if the date means anything to you, that was when the AIDS crisis really came to the fore. Anyway, Joyce admits to her friends years later that John was homosexual, and at that, Joyce falls to the floor with a thud. It was like that. I don't want you to think that this is an overly serious book. It is a serious book. It's funny as hell, though, in a lot of places. Brian Francis is a dynamite writer. His supporting characters in particular, and we talked about this, he treats all the characters with a lot of love. Even Joyce, who denies her son's reality, Mrs. Pender, who kills off Freddie. They're lovingly drawn. And I asked Brian Francis about this, in particular about a character named Walter who comes into the book about 2/3 of the way through, who was Freddie's last lover and is just hilarious. I mean, he's just one of those wonderfully bitchy gay people that I've had a lot of them as friends in my life, and I hope that you've had them in yours. And Brian said to me that I wish I had a Walter in my life that I could just fly off to Miami and meet up with. But I don't, so I got to invent him in the end novel. Other great thing about Natural Order is that both Mrs. Pender and Joyce, as I may have mentioned, the book takes place over 70 years. Absolutely shattering portrait of what it's like to be old in a senior's home. People have been independent all their lives, all of a sudden are treated like mindless children. Brian Francis himself used to be a volunteer at a senior's home, and there's a character in the book named Timothy, who I think that, knowing the fact that I just told you, you'll see as the stand-in for the author. There's a wonderful line in it early on where, by this point, Joyce, John's mom, is quite old and is in the senior's home, and this nice Filipino woman who comes by every night, to fill the water glass, and do you need anything, Mrs. Sparks, and so forth. And Joyce says to the reader, I could have told her I could have told her I was pregnant, and she would have asked if I wanted more ice in my glass. The book made me cry. There's only 3 books in my life that have ever actually made me cry: Black Beauty, Gatsby, and this one. Here's what done it, because I kind of lived this scene. John, Joyce's son, is suffering a schoolyard beating, and Mom appears to save him from it. I had that happen to me. In a lot of ways, I think that kind of made me an outsider and made me a reader, and that's why you and I are talking today, right? From that part of the book, John, I said, and sat down next to him. What happened? His eyes were not on me, but on the sky overhead. Why did you come here? His tone was seething, as though I was the one who'd just done this damage to him. I didn't understand his question or the anger behind it. I told him we had to get home. I helped him stand up, and he put his arm around my shoulder as we clumsily hobbled our way across the schoolyard back to our home and my half-baked cookies. To this day, I play this scene over and over again. The field, the freezing puddles. Sometimes I'm barefoot. Sometimes the number of boys in the circle quadruples. My son's My son's question hangs in the air like fog. Why did you come here? It was only years afterwards, once he was long gone and I was left with a name on a granite tombstone, that I understood what he meant. If I hadn't left the house that afternoon, if I hadn't stumbled on that scene, if I hadn't heard him being called those names or hovered over him as he lay bleeding on the ground, John would have been able to preserve some scrap of dignity. The boys would have bored of him. They would have gone on to other targets. He would have eventually gotten up. He would have made his way home on his own that day. He'd have thought up a story to explain things. That he'd fallen. That he'd stepped in to help another boy. Anything but the truth. I would have believed him with all my heart. Beautiful book. Going to leave it there. I'm not going to try and attach any further meaning to it, but beautiful book. If you'd like to purchase a copy, I know that it's available on bookshelves in Canada, even as we speak. If you're not in Canada, hello! If you're not in Canada, you can order a copy if you would so choose and would like to endear your correspondent with a few cents of commission through buythebookreviews.com. There's an Amazon bookstore on my site. Thank you very much. This has been A Book and a Martini. We're going to be recording another one in a few minutes. But for now, for all of us who work the late shift, good night, everyone.